Welcome to the Bad Boss Brief. I am Stephanie Peirolo.
And I'm Eugene S. Robinson.
And we are at episode 67, which we are calling Performance Politics.
That's well suited for today, yes.
I think so. I mean, we're going to talk about ways in which people do performative actions and demand them of other people. How that impacts the workplace. But we want to start out by saying, as many of you who have listened to us before know, we don't completely shy away from politics. And Eugene and I are largely on the same page politically, but we also don't focus on politics because this is a podcast about work, about bad bosses.
Business.
And business. But sometimes, especially now in the United States, you can't really avoid the intersection of work and politics. There were a number of people who were fired from their jobs for comments or postings that they made about Charlie Kirk after his assassination. And something that they put on Facebook suddenly got them in trouble at their actual job. Before we start, I just wanted to talk about some of the repercussions you've had about some of the things you've posted on social media.
Well, you first of all, listen, you need to be super paranoid about social media. And I'll explain exactly how I've done that. At one point, a boss, and this is in the age of social media, so I think I've been on Facebook since 2005 or something, was expressing an interest in being a Facebook friend. In fact, he indicated that his feelings were hurt that we were not already Facebook friends. And I was like, this guy's already too much input into my business. I don't want him there. But now it's become a workplace issue because he's now saying his feelings are hurt, that I'm not there. And, mouthing these shibboleths about, well, we're all family here. Okay, so I include him. I clear him as a friend on Facebook. And immediately I know that this is a horrible mistake. So I friend him because I don't know when he's going to be on. And I start scrolling through all of their kind of administrative work about how to create essentially a no-fly list. So he's technically a friend, but he's blocked from seeing anything of any substance, right? And this is not airtight because people frequently, the system just doesn't work. Like the guy who's the number 2 guy who I'm friends with at Facebook was hacked in the last month. It happens. So I put him there. A bunch of other people, work-related people, I put in that no-fly zone, and I had to do that for every single bit of social media I have, right? But that still, under this circumstance, wouldn't stop somebody who was inside the fence and suddenly had a difference of opinion with you from screenshotting something and tweeting it out or sending it to your employers, in which case then suddenly you have to answer for an opinion that has nothing to do with the work that's connected to you. So what Stephanie is referring to was recently I wrote a piece on Charlie Kirk, what I figured was an even-handed piece, especially in light of what I was going to write. And I just said, we're really not going to advance very far as a country if killing each other is the only kind of means of expression. We'll just all be dead. And somebody who, from my point of view, had no dog in the hunt, as the expression goes, a French guy, a guy who got his PhD from the Sorbonne in like aesthetics and art, decides to threaten my life on Facebook as a result of what he thought was a callous mistreatment of Charlie Kirk. And usually, this is not something that I would respond to. Like usually, you brickbats, it's nothing that needs, there's a journalistic thing of don't apologize and explain. But in this instance, I was irked because never once have I offered an opinion on French politics to anybody who was French, much less threatened to kill them. So I did a whole piece about who is Mike Moak or Mark Moak, I can't even remember, and why is he threatening to kill me? And sent it out, of course, to everybody at the Sorbonne that I could think of, as well as if I could contact his mother, I would have as well. And he's been amazingly quiet since then. But it is in a day and age when people carry through with threats that they make, you can do nothing but take this seriously, especially now that I live in Europe. So yeah, it was a funny couple of weeks, and I mean, I would. There's nothing that would stop me, absolutely, positively, from doing it again. I am ride or die for First Amendment and will express myself any way I deem necessary, and I don't give a crap what you think. So, but also, I'm also probably, I'm probably the worst person in the world that you should threaten. So, so good on Mark Moak for having the stones to do so, but this will not work out well for Mark Moak. So, but yeah, this is the new workplace where you can be 1984 style snitched out by a coworker who suddenly disagrees with your take. And I was told actually during the first Trump administration, to cool it via opinionating in the office, where we were all family, because there were Trump voters in the office who had their feelings hurt by some of the things I was saying regarding Trump's first administration. So we've been in this strange place for by my reckoning, at least over a decade. So what can you do?
Do you feel with those death threats, do you feel like you're in some sort of danger or jeopardy? Do you take pause as you're going to get up on the stage to perform?
Well, this is where this is where I sound. My caution might be trundled straight into paranoia and strangeness, but I am rarely unarmed. But I like almost absolutely never. And I also have a contract writer that stipulates very serious, that I've had for years, very serious security concerns, probably since around the time I got into a major argument with the Matson family. And so that would be in 1991. So I've been super cautious since then. And it's, yeah, indeed written into my contract about security at clubs and venues and so forth.
So the reason that I thought about this is I moderated a panel on DEI, kind of how
Yeah.
DEI had changed from 2020 to 2025. And there were some interesting things that came up. And what all of the panelists agreed on is that there was a very strong performative aspect of DEI policies, at least in the advertising industry, which is where I mostly work. That was a lot of checking of boxes and, demonstrating things that didn't actually lead towards substantive change.
Mm-hmm.
It got me thinking about this idea of like checking boxes and being performative, and where is the line and how do you deal with that at work? And the story that came to my mind is something that happened, I think it was during the pandemic. So like maybe I think it was, let's say early 2020, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And a white woman who worked at a nonprofit that was working specifically with a marginalized community of people of color. I'm going to keep some confidentiality here. This white woman came to the executive director and said, you need to have a mandate that everyone uses their pronouns in their email signature. Everyone in the company has to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the policy at the time was that anyone was free to do that, and many people did put their pronouns in their email signature, but many people did not. And she said by not mandating that as policy, this executive director, who was a man of color, was showing that he was transphobic. Now, put aside the fact that this white woman was saying this to a man of color who ran an organization that, as part of the many services they provided direct services to trans people of color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this was already happening. And there was just this tremendous amount of pressure, this kind of ongoing campaign. And at the time, when I heard about this, I really recognized that as, again, white woman being judgy and running amok. But
right.
What is the purpose of this, right? The purpose, my understanding of the purpose of using your pronouns was in 2020 to acknowledge that people have different gender identities and to signal that you are welcoming them, right? So kind of like a little signal, a little virtue signal that I understand and acknowledge people with differing gender identities. Got it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that still necessary now? Don't most people already figure that out? And do you need to say that to someone who runs an organization that specifically helps trans people?
Yeah. Well, for me, it goes back to Deadwood. Strangely enough, a super well written show of, I don't know, about 25 years ago at this point, where Ian McClellan, I think is now Ian, no, no, Shane McShane, who played the lead role, was trying to explain something to somebody, and he said, Yankton, this town that was next to Deadwood, apparently, Yankton is muscle, and I don't like muscle. And anytime anybody has approached me with a heavy hand, something like this, though I am an ally, I don't like the muscle. I like the idea of people being free to do so. I don't think it indicates that you are anti-trans and not have done so. And if I were in that company, I go, in what fashion do you imagine that we are better serving the community by mandating this, by forcing people to actually do this? I mean, what's important to me is not whether they are trans or they're non-binary or they're male or female or cisgendered, but what matters to me at the end, if I am the boss, that they're doing a great job. And we have plenty of people here doing great jobs. And I'd like to focus on that. But if you want to, go ahead and do it. But punishing people for not doing it is not how we want to be. That's not how you treat members of your family that you love. And that would be my explanation for how we would proceed. But at the same time, I mean, our history is replete with examples of well-meaning people who have hurt other people in their efforts to be well-meaning. And this, I don't know necessarily. I mean, everybody's got it. If you have trans friends, they all have different stories. And I have quite a few trans friends, and they all have different stories about how they do it and how they want to move through the world. And I'm okay letting them do that. I'm not in a position to force, but I just hate the idea of forcing, mandating.
It depends on, one of the things I always say to my clients is, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And is
Correct.
it a solvable problem? And what I think is interesting in this case is, so in working, I am a person with chronic pain. And one of the ideas in managing chronic pain is to recognize there is a difference between hurt and harm.
Correct.
So if you fall down and break your ankle, the hurt, the pain is signifying harm. You need to be still. Do not walk on that foot, that ankle.
Correct.
With chronic pain, you are feeling hurt, but not actually experiencing harm. And it helps to understand that duality. And I think that happens a lot at the workplace. So this white woman in the example that I used feels hurt. She has some emotional pain or psychological disturbance because people are not doing what she wants them to do. And that is genuine. She feels distress. The question is she being harmed? Is anyone else being harmed? And often in these circumstances, the only real hurt is somebody's feelings are hurt because they don't feel like they're being treated the way that they want, or they're fundamentally not getting their way, right? So here's another example. On the flip side of that, so we're recording this in the week of Yom Kippur. And the other day, I think it was yesterday or the day before, at the University of Washington, there was a large class of young people who were taking a psychology course. And it is the High Holy Days. And someone walks into the class, not a student, walks into the class and starts evidently yelling Nazi propaganda and throwing Hitler salutes. And some young people and the professor get up to get this guy out of the classroom. And there's some video of the event, which shows this sort of feckless white guy backing off, apparently holding a phone saying like, I'm videotaping you. And all of these students streaming out of the classroom and basically like walking across the center square. They didn't harm him. I didn't see that they were touching him, but he was running away from them. And there were like 100 people confronting this guy, right? Confronting him and saying, you don't get to come into our classroom with this bullshit. you are going to be escorted out into the waiting arms of campus security. That I think is appropriate. That is a real harm, right? That is a real harm to the people in that classroom. And it should be addressed, and it should be addressed definitively, which, you know, I think those young people did in a way that I found to be sort of heartwarming. There was hurt and harm. People were being harmed. And so often, especially in like liberal enclaves like Seattle, where I live, there's this super judgment, this like, you're not doing it right, that I think is ultimately not useful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's which is kind of, I mean, no, this is kind of why we're in the situation we're in. You know, I've now come to call them, as I've done on another podcast, the professional managerial class that controls the more well-meaning left side of the aisle, and it frequently falls for these things of not making the distinction between hurt and harm. And I think it's done them a great disservice, and kind of why we are where we are presently, presuming that you don't go full paranoid and believe that the election was stolen, as I actually secretly do. So, or maybe not so secretly, since I just mentioned it.
Well, and the phrase that I use is the professionally aggrieved.
Yes.
Right. And that there are large groups of people on both sides of the aisle, to be fair, in the United States, who are professionally aggrieved.
But you know what? I think social media has so much has had so much to do with that, because everybody feels like they have a voice. And I grew up in an age where everybody didn't have a voice. Moreover, the message that was delivered is, you know, some of you don't deserve to have a voice. I mean, if you're sitting on the street corner with no pants on, screaming about space radiation, you know, you don't really need to have a website and a following and followers and TikToks and all that stuff. So, you know, anyway.
I mean, I appreciate the fact, there are some aspects of the fact that people who would never have had a voice get to speak, and they can have whatever followers they want to have, and people can engage with their content. I think what happens is that outrage has been monetized. And so, you know, the clicks are driving the content, and people like to be aggrieved. They like to have that sense of like, this is wrong. I am better than you. And I think what people are not understanding is that, you know, in a community, which I think a lot of people on the left say this, and I actually happen to agree, is that the antidote to fascism and authoritarianism is community, mutual aid. And I think that's true. But I think a lot of people, maybe they have less experience with community than I do, because I'm in a number of communities, and communities are often difficult, right? Often you have to interact with someone who is unskillful, who is coming from a place of woundedness, who is, in your estimation, as dumb as a box of rocks. And you need to exercise compassion, give them a chance to make a mistake, learn and be better. And that is so antithetical to the ersatz communities that build up online, where everyone piles on and agrees, but there's no sense of like, what if this person just made a mistake?
Yeah.
They learn to do better. Do we have to completely reject them from the fold because they didn't do what we wanted in the way we wanted?
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I mean, I'm glad you're willing to step into the fray and grapple with these issues, because I've been, if anything, kind of an anti-community guy for the entirety of not even my professional life, my personal life. I distrust them. I didn't have any siblings until I was 10. So I feel more, not isolated, you know, solitary. And I've lost, at last count, I've only knowingly lost a few friends. And one of the friends was irked. He said, you've expressed public disdain for my position on the Russia-Ukraine war, and I'm sick of it. That ended what was over 10-year, possibly a 15-year friendship, you know. And of course, this wasn't in person or on the phone, or even email. This was via Twitter, which was the most ridiculous thing ever. And I go, two guys sitting in their underwear, ending a 15-year friendship over smoke. There's nothing here, there's no reality to this. So yeah, it is. It is. I think in the full day of judgment, that people who created these systems are going to have a lot to answer for. I think because it's not really helping anybody. It's not advancing the discussion. So,
But I do think it is part of human nature. There was a really excellent Substack piece this week by Charlotte Clymer, who's a journalist, a trans woman who was a member of the military for a long time and writes really well about many things, including the military. And what she was saying is that she was talking about the rage that white men feel when someone who is not a white man can accomplish something they do not have the capacity or desire to accomplish. And it's that hurt and harm thing, right? They feel harmed. And what she was talking about specifically was women who have qualified as rangers, right? So in the military, becoming a ranger is a very arduous process that very few men or women can do. But there are a number of women who have received what she says is the ranger tab. So whatever the insignia of becoming a ranger is. And
she's going to be a recon ranger. She's going to live a life of danger, right? There's a song that goes with it, right? Yeah.
For a woman to become a ranger, she has to pass the exact same physical tests that a man does. And there is a general sense among many white men of huge outrage that there are women who are so much stronger than they are, that they can do something that most men cannot. Now, those women are they're not harming anyone by taking that particular path in their military career. But so much, what Clymer's point, which I happen to agree with, is that so much of this sense of outrage about quote unquote DEI hires has to do with this sense of hurt and harm that someone who doesn't look like me is achieving accomplishments, whether it's career or fame or finance or military rank, an achievement that I am not ever going to have happen. And that somehow that is seen as a personal harm, that is seen as damage.
These people are so heavily cloistered. I don't know how, at this point, as a lifelong athlete, I've seen women do better than me at everything. I'm 6'1", 220 pounds. I've seen women out squat me. I've seen women out bench me. I haven't seen any women out deadlift me, but it's inevitable, right? I've had women beat me in foot races. I've had everything you could imagine I have seen, and going into it, yes, you might have said, I assumed as a result of some gender prerogative that I was going to win. In the end, I discovered that I can't always win.
The difference is you don't react with outrage and try to change policies and processes to prevent people who do not look like you from running the race.
Correct. That is what Hegseth has laid out during what I'm hoping to be a short tenure as a Secretary of War. I think is disgusting. And not only is it disgusting to me, I've got a clutch. It's well known. I used to work in the defense industry for the first 3 years of my professional career. A lot of guys I know, West Pointers, military guys, are disgusted by what they had to do. Be either generals, executive level staff members who have important things to do in the defense field, being flown out to be an audience for these clowns. It was shambolic. So yeah, this is fully understood.
So if you are feeling hurt and feeling like your understanding of the way things ought to be is not being honored at work and personally, I would advise you to step back, take a beat, and say who actually is being harmed.
Yeah.
Is there real harm? And then take actual action to address or mitigate the harm, right? I mean, and one of the things that came up, one of the panelists in this DEI panel that I did, he said, the system is working exactly as it was designed. It is not broken.
Correct.
And I think that was really profound. And this is an Asian American man, and the man next to him, a Black man, was like, "Yeah, the system is working as it was designed." And to
Mm-hmm.
really sort of own that and recognize that, like, all of this is the system working as it was designed.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are going to want to change that, let's change the narrative. Let's flip the script. Let's be intentional and really examine. So what would a different system look like? How would we show up differently? So if you're at work, if this is coming up for you or somebody that you work with, really try to unpack hurt versus harm and who is being harmed, and maybe decide what real action is as opposed to performative virtue signaling.
And don't threaten people's lives.
There is that. And yeah, exactly. Did you have a fire me today?
I do. Yeah, this is a very, very simple one. Let me see how it was. I'm going to frame it in terms of a question. Do you, and then I'll explain a bit. Do you or do you not get high with your boss? Now, on the face of it, everybody would go, of course not. But in this scenario, the boss has requested this. So there are a couple of steps to getting there, right? In Silicon Valley, there's many a talk of microdosing. People are experimenting with mind-expanding drugs, ketamine. You can be much more creative. You get less sleep and so on. The life and work, the line is permanently blurred. After work, you are socializing with your boss, and you're talking about what you're doing. I'm going to Vegas for this weekend. Something. Oh, do you party? This is a loaded word. I remember being 16 years old and being asked if I hustled. I was a dancer, so I thought he meant dancing. He was asking if I was a male prostitute. Totally different scenario. So this guy is to talk about what they're doing. Guys, do you party? How do you answer this question? Right? Clearly, there are elements of professional advancement involved here, because if your boss is asking if you party because he parties, that will work out well for you. Maybe if the boss is asking if you party because you're some sort of an entrapment thing, how do you answer? So the person in question gave a very neutral answer. I just love the whole EDM scene. David Solomon from what's the big brokerage house on Wall Street?
What is EDM? What is EDM?
Electric dance music.
Okay.
Yeah, David Solomon, the big. I can't even remember the biggest one there is. It's still around. Not Lehman Brothers is gone. So he's on the EDM scene. A lot of people go to Burning Man or there. So this is not. Clearly the boss brought it up. Wanted to know should we take our friendship to the next level where it's an actual friendship and I'm not the boss, you're not the employee, but we're hanging out at Burning Man, getting high and partying. And I actually said. He gave some neutral answer, and the boss pushed and said, what is your preferred, party mix? And he's like, well, what do you? And then the boss starts listing MDMA, MDA, ecstasy, and he's in a very weird position, and he's doing well at the company. He's been there, 3, 4, 5 years maybe, but this is clearly this is the new age. You want to play a round of golf, and he was really caught. And finally I said, I think the best thing is to say, I'll meet you at a show and we'll hang out and see where it goes. In other words, according to Dan Savage, noted sex columnist, he is giving and game. Whether or not you should actually get high with your boss, I had no answer for. I had absolutely no answer for. It seems to me, though, like a terrible idea. That's the most I could come up with.
Seems like a terrible idea, but I also don't think this is a new phenomenon. You talk about the fact that people are microdosing, and that certainly wasn't happening years ago. But
Correct.
I'm a recovering alcoholic. I haven't had a drink since 1989. That encompasses almost the entirety of my career. And it has harmed me that I don't drink. People want to go to cocktail parties. They want to, and I will go to cocktail parties. I have done many things at venues where many people are drinking, because that's part of my job. But there are people who get very uncomfortable when I will not drink with them.
Right.
And I am like, well, I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety is important to me, more important than this job. So I do think that there is a risk in whether you don't drink with your boss, you don't golf with them, you don't whatever. But again, as an individual, you need to prioritize what it is that you do. And, I'm not going to drink just because somebody turns to me and says, it's unlucky to toast with water. Get this woman a glass of wine in front of 30 people who have frozen mid-toast to address the fact that I'm trying to toast with water. But I think that there's also the understanding that when those boundaries come down, people do weird things.
Yeah.
They say things that aren't appropriate. They, have physical contact that isn't appropriate. It's just not something that you need to engage in. But I do understand for somebody that might enjoy recreational drug use, that they might feel that they have to.
Also keep in mind the things you mentioned, alcohol, as far as I know, is legal. Your boss is talking about technically illegal substances. So if you think your friendship with this person is solid enough to weather, suppose you're at loggerheads over something, you're exposed. And I like lawyers like to always talk in terms of exposure. You are exposed. And it won't help you at that point to turn around and go, well, he's the one who got me. Nah, it's not going to work.
Right.
It's not gonna work.
Exactly.
So.
Well, if you have questions like that or any other ideas for future shows, please get in touch. WTF@badbossbrief.com. WTF@badbossbrief.com. I read everything that comes in and respond to most. So let us know what you'd like us to talk about next, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bad Boss Brief podcast with your host, Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Peirolo. You can check out more of their work by visiting speirolo.substack.com for Stephanie and eugenesrobinson.substack.com for Eugene. You can also find Eugene at Mr. Sleep 3, that's the number 3, on Insta. Reach out with your questions, concerns, worst case situations, or suggestions to us at WTF@badbossbrief.com. Stephanie will personally answer every single submission. Be sure to join us at badbossbrief.substack.com every other Wednesday for new episodes of Bad Boss Brief so you can gain further insights into your workplace environments. Until next time, don't be an asshole at work.